Hi everyone and welcome to the Total Education Hour. Maybe the studio looks a little different now. You're used to seeing me with a bunch of people around table with a mic talking on the radio. Well, things have changed in a way, and I decided that we're going to launch a television program now. And I'm again the host of the show, Neil Haley. So if people that have been watching on Bethel Park Cable Access TV and also on YouTube all over the world have seen the television show and seen the studio, but I have a different studio now. The studio's in my basement, so it's somewhere I wouldn't be able to really film at all. So I thought, let's do this, a monthly roundtable discussion, just like the radio show. And for fans out there that watch the TV show, I'm sure you've checked out the radio show, again, nationally syndicated, 7 hours of programming a week. But I thought, let me try what I did with the radio show and do it now with the TV show. So I want to welcome in the studio, and really excited, Dr. G. Dr. G, you've been on my radio show, and now you're going to be my co-host. Thanks again for coming by the studio.
It's really nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited because you provide such great information in parenting. And the way we met each other is such a funny coincidence, because I was looking at you as a national expert, and we find out we're really close together. So how cool is that? It's just something that I was so excited about. But tell a little bit about your background.
Well, that's what Pittsburgh's like, right? Is that we're an international city, but it's really a small town feeling.
Exactly, exactly.
I'm a family physician. I see babies. I saw a one-day-old in the hospital yesterday, all the way up to patients who are over 100 years old. But the crux of my practice is seeing generations in the same family. I have some families where I see 4 generations.
Wow.
And I practice in the East End of Pittsburgh, but in addition to that, about a year and a half ago, I began to be approached to do some speaking and writing about parenting nationally. And it's a real passion of mine. I have 4 kids of my own, and this is an area in which parents are really looking for resources and tools so that they can do the kind of parenting they want to do without having the guilt and the stress and the fear that comes along.
Exactly. Oh, parenting is just the challenges I know for kids of my own, absolutely. And I think what you're able to do when you provide these segments for the community, and the whole goal is to educate the community, and that's what our television show is all about as well. To people that can't find information like that, you provide that information and you break it down so easily for people.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when you did a few radio gigs, I'm like, hey, don't worry, it's no sweat. Like I said, I interview about 18, 19 people a week, and I said, we'll just have a conversation. And I'm sure you're seeing this on this whole TV thing, saying, wow, okay, this is a different thing, but just pretend I did my first talk a couple weeks ago, and I had to pretend that I was in my radio studio and I was looking at one person. This is fine with the whole world watching. I'd rather have cameras than
20 people.
20 people. So our roundtable discussion today, and we're going to look to bring in other people from the community of Pittsburgh that have national perspective as well, and people listening nationally that do travel into Pittsburgh and want to provide education in a variety of topics involving parenting and education and the teaching end. We bring those 2 areas. But I wanted to talk about the overview on parenting. Parenting is a difficult thing, but it's changed so much, hasn't it, Dr. G?
It really has changed. I think that one of the things that is a real advantage for parents in the last 2 generations that didn't exist before that is now we see parenting also as something we can learn to do better.
Yes.
Right? That if there's a struggle or a new challenge that comes up, there are resources in addition to our immediate family.
Absolutely.
Don't you think the culture has changed where maybe in the 1950s and before, you would never mention a family obstacle outside the privacy of your own home?
Exactly. You would never do that. And just think about it. A lot of times mothers were working in the 50s. You were dealing with a lot of different things, and that the dad was the primary breadwinner, and that was mostly parenting was 2 parents. Those things have absolutely changed. The dynamics of parenting has changed in so many ways. And then provide all the different things, outside services, different activities, things that weren't like that back then. It was everyone was used to eating at 5 o'clock. I don't know when my family eats at 5 o'clock, even when I am home, because of how busy I am. I talk to families all the time. Back and forth they go. We're going to talk about those challenges later on. But what do you think what makes it so the situation that people that talk about, especially let's talk about the stay-at-home mom, how that has changed from the days back 20, 30 years ago. What do you see the differences there too?
Well, one difference that really strikes me, have you heard the term work at home mom?
Yes, I have.
Right? So this, and people talk about work at home mom versus stay at home mom versus work out of the home mom, and I think that these are not distinct categories. I don't know a mom who does not pull a paycheck from outside the home
Exactly.
who isn't working at home, right?
Exactly.
She might be working on her work as a caregiver and a mother and a homemaker in addition to trying to earn some income from somewhere else. But the work that we do is not only based on who writes us a paycheck or if we get a paycheck at all for that work. Everybody's working. Everybody's
Right.
balancing a bunch of different things.
Exactly. And think about, and this is for people out there, think about this, that you're right, that the stay-at-home mom, there aren't many stay-at-home moms, they're just the soccer moms now. There are not many stay-at-home moms. There are still, but many of them have to earn income, especially with this economy being what it is. Because the economy makes it so, but what we're seeing is this entrepreneurial spirit now for moms that they say, wow, I can stay at home and be with my kids, but yet I still can have a business as well. So that changes a lot of dynamics, which we had in one of our talks before.
Absolutely. And I also think that even if you're not trying to earn an income, you're still balancing. Volunteering someplace, involvement in a faith-based organization, are you helping out at school a little bit? So I mentioned all the things I do, and I'm a soccer mom, right? You'll find me every Sunday afternoon, you'll find me on the sidelines of the soccer field and also on the sidelines of my son's football games, right? So there is no one label that really defines every experience a parent is having. Do you find yourself on the sidelines of a game or a practice?
When those days come, again, 7, I try to schedule the weekend activities, but it was funny, I was on with one of my, I do some publicity work, and one of my people I work with is an entrepreneur, and he's on the phone talking to me while he's at the soccer game, but at least he can be there, or the football game. So that's the difference. The dad on the phone, that the days of that weren't going on, a lot of times the dads were at work, moms were at the events. So things have changed in that way. And then we could talk about fatherhood in so many ways as well. And fathers out there, you've taken on a lot bigger role, even if mom works from home or stays at home and works from home, because you have to kind of pick up the pieces so that they bring in the breadwinning as well. So it's such a challenge. But when you're talking about 2 working full-time parents, that even makes it a difficult thing. And as well, you deal with at home as well with your family.
I'm really blessed in my own particular situation because my husband and I both work out of the home jobs that are flexible enough that we're able to balance our time and make sure one of us is always home. But that's incredibly rare. When I was in residency, when my husband was in residency, it wasn't like that at all. We were working 80 to 100 hours a week outside the home.
See, you pay your dues in certain ways in life and work, and then somehow you can kind of finally put it into a puzzle and make it a little easier in certain ways, but your husband's probably taking in the hours and you're working less in certain ways, and now you have the way of helping people as well. But like those working families out there that I know, the ones that when I used to run an after school program, the difference what they would do is they work so hard where the fact they both work till 6 to 7 o'clock at night. They would pick up their kids from after school at 6. Homework would be 6:30 to 7 o'clock, which is a complete difference than the 50s. Do you see that? So do you see there's so many dynamics out there. There's just not one parenting group.
Absolutely.
And that's why we can talk about this in so many ways. And that's what makes you such a valuable resource, because everyone has different things, and we're going to talk about those challenges and goals and how they've changed, but kind of talk about the ones that you've dealt with in your practice and then have talked to that are both 2 working parents that work a ton of hours. How are they able to manage everything and still be able to do all the things that you talked about?
Well, I think that the real key is to figure out what your priorities are and then recognize that when you say yes to some things, you by definition say no to other things. That we don't, as parents, have to be or want to be people who say yes to everything.
Exactly.
When we say yes to everything, and in this, I don't just mean, saying yes to everything our kids ask us to do. I mean saying yes to all of the commitments people ask us to do. When we model that for our kids, what we teach them is that they have to always say yes to be successful, to be liked, to be good people, and that's not the case.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And so we got to, and my wife and I, even though I'm working from home now, I'm kind of playing a different role than the days when I was a teacher. I'm kind of picking up those pieces, but really 2 working families is such a stressor, and we're going to talk about those things, but we're missing another group. We've talked about the stay-at-home mom. We've talked about the stay-at-home mom who works. We've talked about two parents that work full time and have less time, but we've missed one avenue. And you know what that one avenue is? The single parent and the challenges they deal with. And that's another thing that you kind of always also help in your parenting resources is how can a single mother or a single father raise a child?
Well, and I really believe that we could sit here for our entire hour and not list all the kinds of families there are.
Oh, we're going through them all.
Right?
That's what I do in the first
Right?
segment. I'm used to the whole
There's
thing, and then
so-
exactly.
There's so many different families that make up the definition of family.
Exactly.
And there are single grandparents raising
Yes.
kids,
Great.
right?
Yes.
And there are extended families, and there's people who are deployed overseas.
Yes.
Right? So there are two parents, but one of them is only on Skype.
Right.
Right? And the struggles that creates. There are people living with chronic illness
Right.
where they might be home all the time, but maybe they're literally too ill or in too much pain to do what they picture as effective parenting.
Exactly.
That doesn't keep us from parenting. It just changes what normal looks like.
So let's think about this. You're talking about what normal looks like. How do you kind of create strategies to provide information for families to make sure that they can get through this quagmire? We're talking about all these different things. What do you do? And that's kind of the overview in parenting, that why someone like a resource like you is needed that maybe wasn't needed in the 50s. And maybe was, but we wish it was. But but now it's so needed because of so many of the differences. So when you kind of come up with a strategy like bedtime, or again extracurricular activities, or a lot of the different talks that you have, how do you kind of picture all those different groups to try to figure it out?
One of the things that I think is really amazing about parenting is that nobody could tell us what to do with our kids. Nobody knows my kids as well as my husband and I do.
Right.
Nobody knows your kids as well as your wife and you do, right? So my goal is never to tell parents what they should do with their kids. My goal is to help them find a structure so that they can figure out what it is they want to be doing with their kids.
It's a key thing, and that's where so many different strategies will work with so many different groups.
Right.
And I do deal with on my radio show so many parenting experts, and I wish they could all work together, because one parenting expert has a different expertise than another. You could have one that really focuses on behavioral issues. Well, you could have another one that really focuses on the family. Yeah. Well, the one that just really focuses on how mom deals with things.
And I don't like the term parenting expert only because I'm never going to be an expert about your kids. Right?
So parent educator is a better word.
Right, I think maybe it is, but whatever you call a person who gives you some resources and tools, that matters a little less than is it useful. And I think the answer to your question is I help parents figure out their goals, right? I don't tell them what their goals are, I just ask them some questions so they can figure out what their goal is. And then I ask them to be clear about their own values and philosophies to get there.
Okay. All right. Well, when we get back, and I'm about to say you're listening to, but we're watching the Total Education Hour on the Total Education Network. When we get back, more with Dr. G, and we're now going to look at goals parents have, which I think is a very, very challenging thing as well, to set those goals so that we can raise our kids to be great adults. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back to the Total Education Hour on the Total Education Network TV show. And I find this so cool because of the conversations, and I can't wait to the roundtable discussions, going from talks to television. I don't think I have a face for TV, but I don't know. There's sometimes, there's always another room for another Dr. Phil in certain ways, and especially an educator. One of the goals someday, I want to have a reality television show. I think Dr. G would say, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? So that's what, because I want to be the king of education media. But so far we've been talking about, and it's really been interesting, is an overview on parenting and all these differences and how they've changed in parenting. Now I want to go to these parenting goals, and I know you know certain goals, and I'll tell you certain goals for my family, that those goals are challenges for so many families because they want, again, their kids to be good adults, and there's so much around this. And we'll talk about those challenges, but talk about setting goals.
So when we parent, it's our job to see the forest for the trees.
Right.
That is probably, I think, the hardest part, but also our biggest gift that we can give our kids. Let me give you an example, because I think that's the easiest way. If your daughter has a soccer game on Sunday and she's invited to a birthday party at the exact same time, how do you pick?
I think it's the commitment.
So you're saying your goal is to teach her to be somebody who commits to a team and lives up to that commitment.
Exactly. I think the commitment is such a key component. If you're not teaching them commitment, how are they going to be committed in their job? How are they going to be committed in their relationships?
Right, and that's absolutely a great way of looking at it. That way, your parenting is furthering your goal for her character. However, a different parent might say, you know what, my child has no problem committing to a sports team, but has some problems making their commitments to friends. And so for that child, the right answer might be not getting to go to the soccer game and going to the birthday party.
Interesting. And there's no wrong answer, is there?
Exactly. So it really depends.
That makes it tough.
And
yeah.
it is kind of the beauty and the challenge of parenting is knowing both our goals for our kids' characters and where they need to be shored up.
Exactly. And so I think that when you're talking about these goals, they have to be a team goal of a family. If there are two parents, or regardless, even if one, you have to set goals before these obstacles happen, right?
And you know what? You touched on a really important idea. If you have a team goal, let's say you're doing something difficult like single parenting and you get some help from a grandparent.
Right, exactly.
And it happens a lot that those two adults from different generations will get into a struggle, right? They'll argue about what they should let the child do or not let the child do, what discipline to impose or what boundaries to set. Mm-hmm. But if the parent goes to the grandparent and puts it in terms of that goal, I really want to raise my son to be a man of good character.
Right.
And so it's important to me that he get all his homework done before the television goes on. So, and I know you want him to grow up to be a good man of good character as well, and integrity and responsibility.
Exactly.
Can you help me by telling him he's got to show you his finished homework before you let him watch TV? Then you're not saying, well, you know, you let me do that and I failed in school and did, right? There's no accusations and recriminations. You're just saying to them, let's partner about this same goal that he can't see because he's 12.
See, as an expert in education, not parenting, I make so many mistakes, and I think this audience out here understands that as well. We make so many mistakes when it comes to parenting. So situations like you talked about, I believe that maybe we should be talking about this before having our first child, about these ideas, about setting these goals, or even when they're younger, what are we going to do? And make sure that these meetings between the parents don't lead to arguments, right? Because everyone has different ideas for how to parent.
Or come to resolution.
Resolution,
right?
Yes.
So my husband, because I'm a little bit type A, put a little sign above our dishwasher that said, in essence, it doesn't matter how the dishes get loaded as long as they all get clean. Parenting is similar. If my husband and I agree about our goals for our kids, but we parent differently, as long as we don't change each other's rules, undermine each other.
Exactly.
Right? But if we come at it in different ways, that's the advantage of kids having more than one adult with a strong role in their lives. Right? So it doesn't matter, actually, if I as a mom do bedtime in this way and my husband as a dad does bedtime in that way. If everybody ends up clean, fed, and secure in their beds around the same time, there's no reason to argue over that.
No, there's not. But coming to that compromise is so difficult. And the reason it's so difficult, that compromise, is that you're in a situation where, and I know this audience out here understands this, and I always like to finally direct to an audience and not looking at my wall, that basically coming to that compromise is so difficult. And so a question when you're saying setting goals and stuff, how do you direct that? How do you make sure that you set the right goal when everyone has such difficult ideas? Where do you brainstorm them with your significant other? Do you come up with so like, let's say a goal of how many activities we want our child to participate in every semester?
That's a great question. Okay, so, and I like your idea that you talk about this before you even have a baby. You talk about lots of things before you have a baby, all your dreams and hopes.
I don't want to, it seems so far away.
You just had a baby.
Yeah, but four.
However,
meaning before any children.
But then you get to meet your kids. And, I will often look at my husband and say, did you order a child with their own opinions? I did not check that off on the menu. I really wanted a kid with all my opinions. But of course, that doesn't ever happen, right? Kids come with their own blueprint.
Right.
And our job as parents is to help them build a strong structure on the blueprint they got. You can't build on a different blueprint. You got the kid you got, right?
Exactly.
So talking about goals every once in a while is excellent, especially in light of the child you're actually parenting. So we have 4 sons in 6 years, and we're not parenting them the same. Our kids would say, that's not fair. But what they mean is, that's not equal. Adults know that fair and equal aren't the same thing. Right? Not all our kids need the same decision in the same situation.
No, they don't.
So I do think that you make your goal for that child and you say, parent-teacher conference is a time when this comes up a lot for people, right? That, oh goodness, the track we want our kid to be on and the track that these other adults in their lives say they're on is not the same.
Right, and I see this. I see this
together?
at home, and I see this with Ava, and I see the situation. I really only want a few activities a semester because I really think academics are the most important thing in the world. My wife, on the other hand, here's the problem. I will bring out the different things I do it on my radio show, but now as a TV show. The problem is that she has a different opinion about maybe the more well-rounded, but I just really believe in this day and age with school, that school comes first. And that those activities are great, but you don't have to have so many, that you're just so overscheduled that, and I believe in just having two each season at this point. Mm-hmm. You're talking 7 years old. When you're talking 13, you can't help it with the high schools and the schedule for sports and different things.
You can help it. You can if you choose to, right? And it depends on what your family needs. If your family philosophy is that you need to have 4 family meals a week together, you're not going to be able to let each kid have 3 or 4 activities. Right, exactly. One of the advantage actually with younger kids is you can smush them all into one activity or one night, right? You can say to them, hey, everybody gets to play soccer on Tuesdays, and they say, yay! But then they start to grow their own opinions, like I mentioned, right? So in a family that's raising a bunch of kids or a single parent who is managing just 1 or 2 kids, you can't necessarily, or people who, like my husband, work swing shift, so he's gone overnights often. So you can't always be shuffling kids here and there and back and forth. And when's their downtime? Right. Is that an important part of your philosophy, that they learn to manage boredom, that they learn to play with their siblings, that they have friends in the neighborhood?
Exactly.
Is that important? So if you go to your wife and you say, hey, you know what? We both want her to be well-rounded. We do. Maybe I didn't make that clear to you, but we both want her to be well-rounded, I promise you. But I would rather she got that well-rounding over the course of a few years rather than over the course of a few months. Is that okay with you? What does she need to do so that you feel we're giving her what she needs? And where do you feel like she needs shoring up? Where do you feel like she's struggling? And your wife might say, she's not getting to be creative enough at school. And you say, okay, all right, I hear that. So let's make sure that one of her activities is really creative, whether drama or art or music or whatever it is. And what's the other thing I want her to really learn to work as part of a group. Great, let's make sure the other thing is a team activity.
And the difficulty is that, and this is really one thing that concerns me, the difficulty is that you set these goals, you set these high standards for certain things, saying, oh, well, if they don't get to do this, we talked about this off air, they don't get to go ahead and be involved with a certain musical instrument, they miss out on ever getting to become a superstar. Or if we don't get them involved in gymnastics, they might not be the next Natalie Comaneci or whatever. All these different things that you miss out on all these opportunities. So, we got to try them all. No, it's got to be well-roundedness. But how, as parents, can you set those goals together? That's the hardest thing. So I'm guaranteed if you talk to parents and you surveyed them, how many moms are making all the decisions, or how many dads are literally, and fathers, I'm speaking to you out there, you have to be involved in your kids' decisions. If mom is making them all, and then you come in at 12 and say, what's going on here? You've missed the boat. Together as a team, we have to make decisions. So how do we make sure we can do this? I mean, you've told me some of these ideas, but yeah, I think that that ability to kind of have dialogue is so important.
I think it is. I spent a lot of the last segment saying that I don't tell parents what they should do. I just ask questions and provide resources. One thing that I do urge parents to think about is to get away from the idea of making our kids happy as kids. That as parents, that's not our responsibility, and I don't think it should be our goal. Kids will work on making themselves happy. That's a natural human instinct. We need to equip our kids so that they can find and make their own happiness as adults. And so what that means is, I think, making a list of or a picture of the child you're trying to raise, the character traits you're trying to instill. Maybe work ethic is really important. Maybe faith connection is the most important thing for you. Maybe there is that you really need to instill in your child that understanding that they are unique and that they are deserving of respect, and those are the skills that you really want to work on for this child and this personality and your family philosophy. But whatever it is, one of the things that we did in our family is we made a family creed. We made a list of single words, and we stuck it on the fridge. I mean, it's in my 8-year-old son's handwriting on a piece of notebook paper. It's not, we did not frame this in calligraphy. But basically, we sat down with our sons about 1.5 years ago, and we said, hey, you know, you're all boys. You're very close together in age. We live in a pretty small, tight-knit community. You're going to end up with the same teachers, the same coaches. A lot of your friends' parents will know more than one of you. When someone says to you, oh, you're a Gilboa boy, aren't you? What do you want that to mean?
Right.
And we made a list of 10, 15 different words. Helpful, friendly, thoughtful, resourceful. And my husband and I added 2 of the words. They came up with the bulk of the list. And now when somebody does something, especially one of the kids does something that we don't like their behavior, we point to the family creed and say, hey, Gilboas are helpful. And they go, all right. The best example I can give is that just a week after we made that list, my 5-year-old, he was about to turn 5 at the time, was inviting kids for his birthday party. And he said, he's pretty boy-oriented. He said, I don't really want to invite those 2 girls from my class because they're so girly and they just don't like to play the same things I do. I want to invite everybody else, but not them. And I pointed to the list and I said, Gilboas are friendly? And he said, oh, right. We should invite them too. Right?
So,
didn't have to have an argument.
But it's so great that you're involving the children in these decisions, or in involvement.
Well, and honestly, after about age 6, you can't not involve them. I really think if you want to succeed.
That's a great point, that you have to allow freedom for your children to make their own decisions, especially when they grow up and they develop more personal responsibility. Because if families out there, if you're not doing that, you're really missing a big opportunity to really allow, and not being that helicopter parent hovering over, and let the kids make their own decisions. If they don't like this activity and they've tried it, why can't they go ahead and try another activity?
You mean at the end of that commitment?
Yes.
So I think that that's excellent. And I would say, we know with 2-year-olds, right? Your 2-year-old wants to go outside, get dressed, and they want to pick their own clothes. You don't say, go get dressed, wear whatever you want, right? You say, would you like this long sleeve shirt or that long sleeve shirt? Because it's January in Pittsburgh. You may not wear your bathing suit and tutu outside today, right? So autonomy means choices within limits. And that's true when you're 2, and that's true when you're 16. So we need to give our kids choices. And this does not have to be a hidden agenda. We have a son who really needs work on being part of a team. Right. So we said to him, this fall, any team sport that's available to us in our community, you may do, but you need to do a team sport. And it's because we want you to learn better how to work as a part of a team, how to work as a part of a group. Even if you want to lead that group, you need to learn to work as a part of a group, because he's a strikeout on his own kid. You don't want to play what I want to play, fine, I'll go play by myself. And that's an important skill. We're glad he has that skill. He also needs this other skill. So we didn't hide it from him. We said, we want you to be a better team member, so this semester you need to play a team sport. Of these, which one do you want to play?
Right. And so what you're doing is you're guiding. You're guiding them to make the right decision.
And you're
providing suggestions.
We're saying character is our goal.
Right. And you have a goal set in place. But that's the big thing of not compromising, but providing opportunities and choices. So when we get back to the Total Education Hour, we're going to now go into the parenting challenges. And I think I'll talk about a lot of my challenges, especially with 4 little ones, 7 and under, how to deal with all those things, especially with all the other things going on. Your job, your commitments, family commitments, your extracurricular activity commitments, and your academic commitments. A lot of challenges. So when we get back, we'll talk about that. You're watching the Total Education Hour on the Total Education Network, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Hey, you ready?
Of course I am.
What are you waiting for?
I was waiting for you.
So we're gonna continue the puppy thing real quick.
Okay, places everyone. In a minute! Do I have to do everything myself?
You can't do it all by yourself.
I'd say that...
Sure I can.
No, he can't. And neither can I. So why don't you come on down to BPTV and help us make some of the great community programs you see on this station every day.
Yeah.
I mean, we can help you make your TV show ideas a reality.
It's pretty awesome.
So come on down. I mean, I am pretty good. But I'm sure I could use your help.
We're back to the Toll Education Hour on the Toll Education Network, the TV studios. And I just am having a blast talking to Dr. G and just so far talking about parenting. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm an exhausted parent right now. 4.5 hours sleep before the TV show today. I didn't get coffee in time. You'll say, you don't need coffee, Neil. But when we're talking about these issues and these certain situations, now the challenges arise. When you have your first child to your fourth child, you're not going to sleep much. So that's going to change a lot of the ways you parent. So that's one challenge as well. Things that are out of your control is one of the biggest parenting challenges, right?
I do think so. Absolutely. I think that the biggest challenge for parents is time.
Yes.
Is feeling that, do I have the energy and the time to do all this extra stuff that Dr. G is suggesting that I do? But I want to really be encouraging. This isn't extra. In the interactions we have with our kids in the course of a day, you might have 20 interactions with your children,
exactly.
right? With each kiddo. So if 5% of those are just intentional about thinking about where's this going character-wise, here's a decision point, how can I lead him a little bit more or lead her a little bit more towards the character I want her to have, then you didn't take up any extra time. It doesn't cost anything to do this, right? And some of this can be on the phone while you're at work, right? You have a 3-minute conversation with your child. Just make sure that part of that 3 minutes mentions something that's about a character trait you really want them to refine.
Exactly.
And so when you feel really overwhelmed by stress and by the time factors and by fatigue, you can use the circumstance you find yourself in. Isn't empathy a terrific character trait to refine in your kids?
Yes.
So you could say, even to, you have a 7-year-old, and what's the next one?
7, 3 years old, soon to be 2, and then our youngest, who is now a month and a half.
So your 3-year-old is bored and coming at you. You play with me? Will you play with me, Daddy? Daddy, please, will you play with me? Right?
Yes.
And you're tired. So instead of pushing her off, giving her an activity that doesn't include you, you could say to her, do you know what would be really nice for me, sweetie? Because I didn't get a lot of sleep last night and I'm feeling pretty tired. Right. Could we play that I'm going to lay here and you're going to explain to me about your dolls? I haven't met them in a while. Just teach me about them. I'm going to lay here. I'm going to relax. If I fall asleep, you can have one of your dolls wake me up, right? She feels like you're playing with her, and you are. You're interacting with her. You're teaching her empathy to see, how's this other person that I want to play with, how's he feeling? What does he need? And you're still giving her some face time.
That is a great point. That's a great challenge that we have to do and have great ideas from people like Dr. G. I would have never thought of this. Like, I'm tired. What I do with my daughters, especially at the end of the day, and especially my daughter on a stage that does not want to go to bed, and it's sometimes challenging, and right now, because of just different things, we have to do that sometimes. We have to compromise. And parents, you have to compromise sometimes. You can't always get what you want, as the song would say. But here's the thing. When we're talking about this, I like the idea, but I'll just say, let's do some cuddle time and we'll watch some television. Then we're interacting. It's not like, get out of here, go play with your dolls. You're providing that bonding time. And time also leads to other constraints where maybe the only time you get to spend with your daughter is in the morning getting her ready to go to school.
It's true. And I think that just adding in a word about something she's done that impressed you, you know, I noticed that you couldn't find the shirt you wanted and you put on a different one. I was really proud of you. That was really resilient.
Right. And what I'll work with her is we'll try to do some challenge activities academically while she's having breakfast and getting ready to go. And, you know, I teach her some Latin prayers and different things like that. So we have that bond, and then we do pray the rosary heading to school every day. So even though I maybe only see her an hour to a day during the week, at least I'm not on my iPhone, guys, at that point in time. On my please don't, I'm not going to even say about the BlackBerry anymore. On any of my smartphones at any time and any place, because what happens, and you know and I know, that it's not always quantity in parenting time-wise. It's quality. And if when you're not devoting that complete attention to your child when you have it, then it's all missed out. It's missed.
I think that and I'm as guilty of it as anybody. It's really stressful to feel like, oh, I could just check my email, or I could just check in with that one friend,
Exactly.
or my friend. I haven't talked to my friend in so long, and she called me and she sounded like she was really hurting. And you know, I'm just here in the kitchen with the kids. I'm not even sitting to eat breakfast with them. I'm just going to give her a quick call and be on the phone while I'm getting them breakfast. I'm getting them breakfast. They're getting what they need, and some of that is okay. We have to make sure we look in our kids' eyes every day.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's really what it comes to. And I'll tell you why. Because when they're in their teen years, we want them to look us in our eyes every day. So we've got to build the patterns that we want to see in the future.
Exactly. So what I see is like that anytime, like eliminating all those things, but what we as parents, and it's kind of terrible when a couple gets to spend time together, and I'd love to see surveys with kids and all their activities when they finally get that alone time. But when we're with our children, it's just an important thing to let everything else go. You're not going to miss that. And I do the same thing because I got the iPhone. Let me go grab that. I got to stamp. You know, as an entrepreneur, you're handcuffed. It's constantly something that you just can't get rid of. But when you're at the time of your kids, they're going to remember that time. Ava's going to remember that time I spent in the mornings with her. Anastasia's going to remember that time when we cuddle. Or Annika's going to remember that time when I put them to bed. These things, even if they're not as much as we want, because we can't help it with our economy and different things, as long as we're providing those quality moments, not chaotic moments, which we'll talk about in a second in the next part of it. We talked about out of control, things will be better, right?
I really believe that we're going to find a balance. We're going to sometimes be on our phone, and we're going to sometimes be getting FaceTime. And we want balance over the course of each day, but that's not realistic. So look back over the course of your week or over the course of your month and say, did I get some of each, right? Did I get some of the work I needed to get done? And did each of my kids get a little bit of my FaceTime that's so incredibly valuable to them? You mentioned at the beginning of the hour this historical perspective. And I think something really important to keep in mind is that of all of the challenges we have that are new, enough time for our kids is not a new challenge.
No.
If we were farming 14, 16 hours a day 150 years ago, you'd have also said, you know, I get the time with my kids in the morning while we're doing chores in the barn, and I get to see them at prayers and dinner.
Yeah.
And that'd be it.
Yes.
Right? So the time stress is not a new stress. And what I do think we have as a new advantage is that we're thinking about it from our kids' point of view, which 150 years ago, they really were just trying to, in a lot of ways, raise their kids to do what needed to be done.
Exactly.
And to stay safe.
Stay safe. And so I think that when we're talking about parenting in that way, and we're talking about the whole situation with parenting, it's so much. It's so many things to think about. But yet parents before, fathers weren't involved at all. And I can't imagine that. A father not there for the birth of their child. And that did happen at one point in time.
That was norm.
That was a norm. A father being available to take their kids to certain events and do different things. Fathers are in that same stress level as mothers now, but yet they don't know how to juggle a lot of those things because work constantly gets them. So that quality time's key. So one of the challenges is time. The other one I would say is, like I was kind of trying to bring up before, the things that are out of your control completely where chaos develops. How do we stay sane?
I think that you're touching also on another challenge, which is fear.
Yes.
Fear that our kids won't be well-rounded. Fear that something terrible will happen
Yes.
to one of our children, right? Helicopter parents are not bad parents, right?
No, they're
This
not.
idea of over-parenting, in essence, comes out of, many experts would say, comes out of the 24-hour news cycle. This idea that maybe more bad things aren't happening to kids than did 100 years ago. Actually, that's overwhelmingly the case, that it was harder to
Yes.
be a kid and more dangerous to be a kid then. But we see everything now, right? There's hardly a terrible thing that happens to a child in this entire country that doesn't get televised.
Correct.
And so parents live with a great deal of fear. And how do we get around that obstacle? And what I would say is partially by seeing the forest for the trees. Faith is really helpful. In whatever you have faith, faith is often helpful. And then that last piece is looking ahead. Let's assume that, God willing, our kids are going to live to adulthood, right? Some of that fear is, what if something so terrible happens to them?
Exactly.
But if our kids live to adulthood, we need to raise them to be resilient enough to walk home by themselves when they're in their younger teenage years, to handle a difficult event and know what resources they have and how to call for help, how to ask for help for themselves, how to have the confidence that they can handle a difficult situation. Having the confidence to handle a difficult situation means letting our kids handle slightly difficult situations and seeing that they can succeed, and then handling slightly more difficult situations. It's a skill to be learned. It doesn't happen by accident.
So fear is one of, I guess, the biggest challenges in parenting because you're afraid. Let me give you an example. My wife will fear if we're too overbearing. She has fear that we are too lenient. And I have fear that, well, is my child being exposed to the wrong things? So you're right. Fear leads to chaos.
It does. It does. And so the important thing to do, resilience is like this, right? Resilience is bad things happen. What matters is what you do next. So you fear that your kids will be exposed to the wrong things. So I would say, okay, push on that, right? The next question is, what if they are? What are you actually afraid of, right? You're not afraid that your child will be 18 years old and hear a swear word. Probably
Right.
You're not afraid of that, right? Mm-hmm. But maybe you're afraid that your child will be 7 years old and hear a swear word. Okay,
Yes.
So your child's 7 years old and hears a swear word. But what matters is what happens next. If you say, oh, hey, that's a word we don't use.
Right.
And she says, oh, why? And you explain it to her.
Yes.
It's not respectful.
Yes.
Right? It'll make people think less of you.
Yes.
It's not how we want you guys to behave. Okay, great. So now you don't have to worry about her hearing swear words because you know that if she hears them, she knows to talk to you about it, find out what words are okay and what words aren't respectful.
So that's a great point when we're talking about fears, that like it's an education process. Things might go not as we expect. Then with the fear, we messed our child's lives up. Unless we're abusing them completely or mentally, physically abusing them, it's not going to mess them up because life's like this. Every day's a roller coaster ride. So kids should learn, as you've said, the word resiliency. They should learn the word resiliency so that they won't fear as well. If parents are in fear, kids are going to be in fear.
It's true. Now, I want my kids to be afraid of crossing the highway on foot, right? Some fears are motivational, are really helpful. The question is just, what's the next thing? And so how do I prepare my kid? Because you don't think that your daughter's going to make it to adulthood without ever hearing a swear word. Okay. So now you need to know, what do you want her to know about those things so you don't have to fear them
The
anymore?
conversation.
Right.
And well, I can't believe how quickly 3 segments have gone by. And we're ready to go to the 4th, the solutions. And trust me, we'll be here for 6 days with solutions, but that's why we have the Total Education Hour television show to be another format to bring the best people who educate families so we have success. So we'll be back in just a moment with some more great education talk on the Total Education Hour.
If you could do one thing to help prevent 36,000 deaths, help decrease hospitalizations and the spread of disease, what would it be? Get a flu shot.
Influenza is a serious disease that can lead to hospitalization and sometimes even death. The flu can affect people differently. Even healthy people can get very sick from the flu, spreading the disease throughout the area.
In 2011, the CDC reported that 20% of the U.S. population contracted the flu, with over 200,000 people being admitted to a hospital for flu-related complications. By getting a flu vaccine, you can reduce your chances of getting the flu and the possibility of spreading the flu.
When more people get vaccinated against the flu, it decreases the spread of the disease throughout the area, making your community a safer, healthier place to live. Tri-Community South EMS is offering free flu vaccines to adults in our local communities of Bethel Park, South Park, and Upper St. Clair.
So do one thing this year. Get a flu shot. It can save your life as well as others. For information on flu shots, contact Tri-Community South EMS.
We're back to the Total Education Hour on the Total Education Network in the TV studios of the Total Education Network all over the world, Bethel Park, and to the world. And I love TV, and I guess I love media, and that's what's so much fun. And I've been talking to Dr. G, and she's my co-host, and we just have been having a blast. But now the problem is we've talked about all these things that parents are like, yeah, duh. But the problem is now we have to talk about solutions. And I don't have the solutions. Or my wife would string me up right now if I did have the solutions and I tried to tell her the solutions. So tell me what you think the solutions are.
So really, I want to be very clear that there is no one answer to raising amazing kids. I'll bet you're raising amazing kids. The trick is to figure out what are they great at, and are you telling them? And what do they need to work on, and how can you do it in the time you already have, right? So maybe on their birthday, right? Maybe around their birthday and one other time during the year, you sit down with another adult who loves your children. It could be your best friend. It could be your parenting partner. It could be their grandparent. But you sit down with another adult who loves and gets your kid, and you say, what's she great at? Yeah. And maybe you write them down, right? You say, these are things she's great at. What are the character traits she has that I hope she never loses?
That's a great point.
Right?
You
see some things in your 2- and 3-year-old that you hope they always keep, right?
Right.
And then you say, what are the things, what are her struggles, or what are the areas where I'd really like to see her overcome? Maybe it's shyness, right? Maybe this is a kid who's inherently shy.
Yes.
You want her to be able to stand up for herself on the playground or to a teacher or to a friend.
Correct.
Maybe yours is a child who struggles educationally and it's starting to really impact their self-esteem, right? And then you look at that list of things that you'd like them to do better, and you say, okay, do we have the resources we need to work on these things?
Exactly.
Right? Maybe we need a coach and a team for some of the things that we want to work on. Or maybe we need a tutor. Or maybe we need to sit down and really talk to the teacher to find out what we could be doing better to support academically. Maybe we need to go once a month more often to our religious place of worship.
Yes.
Maybe we need a little more family time, right? Whatever it is. But once you've got that list in front of you, don't feel like, oh, now here's a huge list of problems I have to solve. That's not it.
I completely agree with you, and I think that what we see, Dr. G, is that there's so much to it in setting goals, how we want to raise our kids to be adults. And one of the big things I see when I see each one of my kids, that they're individuals, that they're different. Please do not treat one of your children the same as the other in meeting. Don't go this whole fair thing, because again, if you have multiple kids, forget it. You're not going to have the time to spend with them. And I guess with Dr. G, with your children and my children combined, we'd have a big outing, a big play date happening.
We need our own zip code.
We need our own zip code. So we're not going to be able to spend that time sometimes. We're not going to be able to devote the certain time. We're not going to have the same expectations for each one of our kids. But do we want them, when they're adults, to walk into a room at 21 and walk into that room and say, he or she's respectful, very talented, well-rounded, and we don't have to say the word successful, but somebody that we can be, I don't want to say the word proud of, but something where we're not seeing some juvenile delinquent at 21 or somebody that has no focus or well-being. So our decisions we make for our solutions in parenting, we have to look at those things. We don't have to look at this battle we're dealing with them when they're teenagers screaming and yelling. Well, guess what? It's out of our control. This is just part of the developmental process. You talk about what do we want to see our kids better at doing? How do we want to see them do it? But they change throughout that time. And with me tutoring birth to college, I see it all the time. So those solutions change, don't they?
They really do, but there are so many resources. And I think maybe one thing that parents, and actually I'm going to press on us moms here, we're not great all the time at asking for help, at saying, oh, okay, I can't actually do it all, right? Because we've internalized this idea that to be a good mom, it means you're by definition doing it all. And really the answer is, to be a good mom, you have to see it all.
Yes.
But you don't have to solve it all.
Exactly.
To be a good parent, you got to look for resources.
Yeah.
You mentioned you shied away from saying, is our kid going to be successful at 21? And I'm glad you did, because very few of us, I think, were successful at 21.
No.
However, if we raise a kiddo that by their 20s is respectful, responsible,
Yes.
and resilient,
Yes.
they'll be able to be successful and happy.
Exactly. And it might not be then, but we have to look at specifically each person. And what I say is fuel their passion in so many ways. You find things that they like. So, for example, Ava really enjoys singing, and I really want to get her involved in that, but it changed after one singing experience. So you got to listen to your kids. Oh, now I like horseback riding. Fine, we'll go do that. But all of its teaching is respect, responsibility, and the ability to be independent.
It's true. Now, a lot of families can't afford to go from singing to horseback riding to Air and Space
and
Museum, right?
Trust me, that's not me either.
But what you can do is say, I really respect that you have that interest. Let's read about it. Let's learn about it, right?
Yes.
That's fascinating to me too. We can watch some YouTube videos about it, right? There are great free resources to find out more. But if time is your thing, right? If you're like, hey, I work a whole job, I've got 3 kids, it's just me, I'm trying to get a whole bunch of things done. My point really is that the solutions are not in the big grand plans. They're not in training to be an Olympic gymnast.
Yes.
The solutions are in 3 or 4 moments in each week.
Do you feel that's a problem when some families put such an emphasis on one thing and not everything else, and they do make it to the Olympics and they do these different things? Do you think it, as a parent educator, that will end up hurting them in the long run in some ways? It depends.
Some families really make it work, right?
Like Joe Brown's, the one from Lean On Me, was on, the daughter was on my show, but I think he was very strong with her, and she was successful in Olympian, but she was so well-rounded. So if you overdo it to the point of, we're not saying a Tiger Woods, but honestly, you think about it. Or you think about the, what was that parent mom that was the crazy one?
The Tiger Mom?
Tiger Mom. A Tiger Mom that doesn't teach all the well-roundedness out there. It can hurt. It can be a problem. So even though that solution's a great thing in
the
one
amazing
ways,
thing about kids, I think, is that you always have the opportunity to change course. If you look at your child and you say, wow, we've really focused on your incredible skill with this musical instrument, but you don't know how to play with friends or deal well with your teachers in school, there's always a chance. And you can say to your child, hey, you're great at this, and now I also want you to get to be great at these other things, so we're going to focus a little bit more on those. There's always time to change course.
Yeah, change course. So when you're talking about solutions, give me 3 recommendations parents can do, because this is why I have her on my show monthly on my radio show. It's because I get to learn, but also my huge audience of listeners all over the world get to learn from Dr. G. So give us 3 suggestions to improve solutions in parenting.
Okay, so I'm going to be really, really specific because I think small things are much easier and they last a long time.
Right.
So for teaching kids to be more respectful, teach your kids the grown-up secret code, which means grown-ups will respect them more if they look them in the eye while they speak to them. Don't use contractions like yeah and nah and I don't know. Use your whole words when you talk to grown-ups. Say, yes, I do think so. Okay? So that's teaching kids to be respectful, is to teach them how to talk to adults in a way that adults will be able to really hear them and respect them.
Hopefully they say hello to them and not walk by them.
Absolutely. All those kinds of things that we know speak to an adult without the adult necessarily even realizing it, that make an adult say, ooh, that's a good kid.
Right.
I want my child to be friends with them.
Exactly.
I want them to be in my class, right? So teach them that grown-up secret code that we know without even being able necessarily to articulate it right away.
Exactly.
To teach kids to be more responsible, give yourself some extra parenting time by giving your kids more responsibilities around the house.
Yes.
They won't do it as perfectly as you would do it, but they need to learn all these things by the time they're out of your house anyway. So spend a little extra time with them, teaching them to do 1 or 2 more things around the house, and then give them that responsibility.
Such great points.
And then lastly, for resilience, one thing that your child is asked to do sometime in the last year that you thought they weren't grown up enough to do, decide what they would need to do to prove to you that they're ready for that privilege.
And again, this roundtable discussion, a lot of times I jump in all the time, but because of I find such unbelievable expertise in this area that you have. If I'm going to talk about three suggestions for solutions, the first one is that setting goals for your children is such a key thing from the beginning. Where do you want them specifically in long-term goals and short-term goals? Look at them as a business in a way that, and that's because I'm a business person. What do I want to see in the next 3 months, the next 90 days? Shout out you to GJ. The next 90 days, where do I want my child to be in this particular thing? And having that conversation. So
it's like a layaway plan. We're 3 months from Christmas, right?
Right. So set those goals. Set those goals. Have long-term goals, short-term goals, and everything in every area of their lives. And I'm not doing it. But I'm now. That's
a really overwhelming task. Right?
I know.
So can you do one goal for each kiddo?
Oh yeah, one goal. See, I don't find it overwhelming, and I'm going to challenge myself to do that. But that's just me. But
we're going to check in with you about that.
Oh, you can. Oh, trust me. You can definitely check it out, because looking now with 4 kids, I kind of forget about the other. And my wife says that same thing. So I guess first to set goals for your kids. Next is, how do you want them to be as adults? What do you really want for them? And that's a long-term goal and objective. And lastly, I guess, is always modify and adapt. We have to modify and adapt our goals and our objectives. So setting is a business plan. In every business plan, we make changes. Well, in our parenting, we have to make changes. We have to look at resources. We have to look at other things to help others. So in the kind of way I came to the suggestions is basically you set goals and objectives, you set long-term goals, and last but not least, the only thing to do is always modify and adjust. As a monitor and adjust, and as a teacher, I did that all the time. That we might have this goal. I want my child to go to Harvard. But guess what we find out? They are much more talented to be in art, or they're really good with their hands. So why am I going to take them in that direction? But also in the way we have to feed that passion. And feed the passion that really look at what our kids, what they enjoy doing. Because you know how many people, Dr. G, and it's really interesting, that don't like their job.
I do.
Don't like to work. Don't like to get up on Monday morning. So you and I love being an entrepreneur. I love doing the things that I'm doing. But where there's like dreading their lives. Well, a lot of times because they have never found that purpose in their lives. And I think that's the key. So I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
And I'm so excited you're my co-host, but after talking to you off air, you're saying, well, I don't know if I can devote the time. When you see the quality of production that Bethel Park Cable Access TV was able to do, and Dave Cable, who is the man, you'll say, this is perfect to get all over the world your message. So I appreciate everyone watching the show, and you can Google search both of us, and we come up everywhere. Dr. G and Neil Haley, the Total Tutor. Have a great day, and we'll talk very soon. Good day, everyone.
Our newest generation of warriors and veterans. Please join us in supporting and recognizing their unique contributions and needs. Go to legion.org/honor veterans to find out more.